The engine of the old station wagon coughed and sputtered as Mia pulled into the secluded clearing, the dense woods swallowing up the faint twilight. She stepped out, her boots crunching on frost-bitten leaves. A frigid wind slithered through the towering trees, carrying with it the faint metallic scent of decay. Mia had been here before, but never physically. The stories on the conspiracy forums described the area as cursed, a stretch of forgotten land where the past had buried a secret too terrible to unearth. They called it the Veil for a reason. Anyone who tried to peel it back either disappeared or went insane. She glanced at her phone, the screen displaying a series of garbled messages from the group chat. "I knew we should have come here together," she muttered under her breath, while staring at the last coherent message from Matt. "We're on to something big. Meet us here at 6 p.m. It was already 6:30. No sign of Matt or anyone else. The air seemed unnaturally heavy as she stepped toward the crumbling remains of a stone structure jutting out from the forest floor. The structure didn't belong here or anywhere. Its jagged edges looked as if they had been melted and reformed into unnatural angles. Patterns etched into the surface, pulsing faintly like veins beneath translucent skin. She reached out to touch it. Something about the surface seemed alive. The snap of a branch behind her made her jump upright. She swung her flashlight around, the beam slicing through the darkness, catching fleeting glimpses of gnarled trunks and skeletal branches. She called for Matt, Anna, anyone? Silence pressed back against her, thick and suffocating. From the shadows a low hum began to rise, a sound that burrowed into her skull, resonating deep in her chest. 2 months earlier, the forums had been a battleground of speculation. A series of mysterious deaths had swept through small, rural towns. Victims were found miles from their homes, their faces frozen in expressions of abject terror, their bodies untouched by any visible harm. Autopsies revealed elevated levels of adrenaline and cortisol. Their hearts had simply given out from fear. Mia, from a journalist turned into internet sleuth, it was the kind of mystery she couldn't resist. Theories ranged from chemical leaks to alien experiments to cult activity. But it was Matt's discovery that tipped the scales. A local archivist with access to declassified documents. Matt had uncovered records of an abandoned research facility in dense woods. Joint project between the military and a shadowy corporation. The project, codenamed Eidolon, had been terminated abruptly in the 1970s, all records sealed. Mia's obsession grew. Her late nights turned into early mornings as she pored over maps, survivor testimonies, and cryptic photos posted by anonymous users. The pieces didn't fit until they did. And here she was, standing at ground zero, the place where it all began. The hum grew louder, vibrating through the soles of her feet. It felt coming from the stone structure. Against her better judgment, she moved closer, her fingers itching to document every detail. As she leaned in, her phone buzzed violently in her pocket. She fumbled to answer, relief washing over her when she saw Matt's name on the screen. "Matt, where are you, and where is everyone else? Get out," his voice rasped, barely audible over the static. The rest of his words were too distorted to understand before the line went dead. Mia's breath hitched as a cold dread coiled in her stomach. She backed away from the structure, her instincts screaming at her to leave. But before she could turn, a shadow shifted at the edge of her vision. She froze with the flashlight trembling in her grip. A figure emerged from the darkness that looked like a man, or what was left of one. The face was a patchwork of raw, blistered flesh, and his eyes were weirdly blue. He tried to stumble toward her, his movement unnatural. "Don't look," he said, his voice gurgling as blood bubbled from his lips. "Don't let it see you," were his words while collapsing down. Mia's heart pounded in her ears, her hands shaking. She didn't have time to process what had just happened. Moments after his collapse, a guttural growl echoed, one that didn't belong to any animal she knew. She bolted, weaving through the trees, her flashlight bouncing erratically. The growling grew louder, closer, and she dared a glance over her shoulder. What she saw defied explanation. A mass of shifting shadows, its form constantly in flux, surged after her. It had no eyes, no discernible features, yet she felt its gaze boring into her, peeling away every layer of her being. The cabin appeared out of nowhere, its windows dark and lifeless. Mia didn't think twice before barreling through the door, slamming it shut behind her. She shoved a heavy bookshelf against it, her chest heaving as she struggled to catch her breath. The growling stopped, replaced by an eerie silence. But she knew better than to believe she was safe. The cabin's interior was sparse, its walls lined with yellowed newspapers and Polaroid photographs. The articles spoke of unexplained phenomena, while the photos depicted blurry figures in the woods, always on the edge of the frame. In the center of the room sat a weathered journal, its leather cover cracked with age. Mia opened it, the pages filled with frantic scrawls and diagrams. The veil is not a metaphor. It is a boundary, a membrane between worlds. They've been trying to breach it for decades. We are the collateral. Her hands trembled as she flipped through the pages. The final page stopped her cold. If you're reading this, it's already too late. A sharp knock at the door made her jump. Mia, a voice called from outside. The voice was unmistakably Matt's, but he never called her by her first name. He always called her M or Chief. Mia, I was supposed to be here with you. I know what you saw in the woods, and I know you're scared. Please, open the door. The knocking stopped. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears as she strained to hear anything, while from the other side of the cabin came chilling whispers. Mia turned slowly, the flashlight beam catching a figure standing in the corner. It was Matt, or at least it looked like him. His eyes were hollow, his expression a grotesque mockery of humanity. "You're not real," she said. The thing smiled back at her by saying, "Neither are you." The walls of the cabin began to warp, the room stretching and twisting as reality fractured around her. The air buzzed with an electric charge, and the shadows came alive, reaching for her. Mia screamed, her voice swallowed by the growing hum. When she woke, the clearing was empty. The stone structure was gone, the forest silent. Her phone buzzed in her pocket with notifications from the group chat. A message from the Matt, where he was asking her if she's still up for tonight. She stared at the screen, her hands trembling. In the distance, the faint hum began to rise again. The veil had been lifted. It was only the beginning.